Hello and welcome to another episode of Foundation with Steve Teed. I am your host and servant, Steve Teed, always asking you that very important question. What is it that you build your life on? What is it that you use to answer those big questions of life? To answer, why am I here? Where did I come from? How do I determine right and wrong? And what's going to happen to me at the end of my life? Those are important questions you've got to ask, and we ask them here, helping you to develop and build on a firm foundation. A foundation that does not fall, a foundation not full of holes, a foundation that doesn't crack. And obviously here I teach that the foundation is Jesus Christ. Teaching His Word, teaching and seeing from the world how answering it His way is the only way that is secure. And so we're going to be doing that today. Let me cut back the music here, and I'll tell you where we're going to go today. Today, I've got a theme all worked out for us, and it was one that I had no problem actually coming up with. Sometimes I actually sit there, I have no idea what the theme's going to be, and it may develop later, but this one I absolutely know. And this theme is going to be called, You Will Be Excluded. You will be excluded. It's really funny. I find it fascinating that we have in our culture such a thing, that anti-bullying day, to a point where everybody wears pink shirts. Pink Shirts Day. And it started because, in Nova Scotia, Canada, it started because a kid showed up one day wearing a pink shirt. I don't know why that one happened. And some of the other kids were making fun of him. And the kids made fun of him. And that day, the next day, two guys who were more popular, far more popular than that, they decided they were going to do something about this. So they decided they wore pink shirts the following day in the stance of against bullying. But one of the things that you will quickly learn is that our culture does bully. Now, they restrict bullying in schools, they restrict bullying in certain places, but they do have bullying in the workforce, they have bullying in the world, and it's not how you think. It's got nothing to do with individuals bullying other people. There are people who do that. Our culture does not approve of that. But what does it approve of? It approves of bullying people who do not hold what they think they should hold, the values that they should hold. That's what we have. And to do that, how do they bully them? Well, they'll just exclude them from societal life. Either you come along and you do what we want you to do, you live the way we want you to live, you teach what we want you to teach, and if you have any beliefs or anything that are contrary to that, well, then we're going to exclude you. And that's what we're going to be looking at today through a couple of stories, a couple of news stories that come up of groups of people who are being excluded, who are being told that you are not going to be able to partake in some aspect because of what you believe. That's what it is. And that's what we're going to look at. So we're going to be looking at first a school district out of Arizona. A school district of Arizona, how they're going to restrict and say a certain group of people cannot participate and will not be hired because of what they believe. And then we're going to be jumping over to a conference of OBGYNs that refused to allow certain groups in because they do not toe the line. And I'm going to show you how this is actually going to be played out. And then after the break, you come on back, we're going to be looking at an exclusion continually, but we're going to be looking at it from a very different way, of how we actually exclude ourselves at times in a spot that we shouldn't. So that's where we're going to be going on. So thank you for joining me. We're going to be digging in. So let's dig into it now. And to do that, because I'm doing news stories, I know you may look at it, I got to get some more, but I just can't help it. I like the sounds. I like it. That's the way it goes. My show. Here we go. All right. Here it is. School district rejects student teachers from Arizona Christian University due to their biblical values. Due to their biblical values. A school district is denying teachers simply because of the values that they hold. All right, let's get into this, because this is one that the title is not just clickbait. Titles like that. I covered one, just its own video, where it says a student was suspended and arrested for for saying there's only two genders. Well, technically that's a clickbait because they weren't arrested for that. They were arrested for trespassing at the school, but they were suspended for saying there were two genders. But this headline here, school district rejects student teachers from Arizona Christian University due to their biblical values. That is absolutely true. Let's unpack this story. Let's unpack it here. Despite allowing student teachers and practicums from Arizona Christian University for the last 11 years without incident, the 5-member governing board of the Washington Elementary School District in Arizona has unanimously voted to stop the practice because of the perceived threat the students' biblical value system poses to LGBT students. Now, think about that for a second. Not the threats, not that these students have caused problems, not that these students are voicing problems, but because of a perceived threat. At a board meeting held on February 23rd, the school district officials had recommended renewing the partnership with Arizona Christian University education students, but the board members, 3 of whom identify as members of the LGBTQ community, said that having the student teachers with biblical values in the state's largest elementary school district is just too dangerous. You're reading that right. You heard that right. Student teachers with biblical values are a danger. Not because they're going to bring in bombs, not because they're going to bring in guns, but because they have biblical values. Yeah, you got that right. That's the problem. And it's perceived. They're a perceived threat. The Christian Post reached out to Arizona Christian University for comments on the severed relationship with the school district Friday, but no one was immediately available. The 5-member governing board members are Nikki Gomez Whaley, President Jenny Albert Bayardi, who's the vice president, Kyle Clayton, Tamila Venezuela, and Lindsay Peterson. Venezuela, who first raised concern about the university's values, insisted that while she supports religious freedom and is aware of current teacher shortages, she cannot support student teachers with traditional Christian values in the classroom. Wow. Yeah, you support freedom of religion, don't you? You don't. They said they support religious freedom. No, you don't. You support religious freedom as long as it agrees with you. That's what you think. You're automatically disassociating somebody, saying you can't get a job here in anywhere in our district. I don't care that we have lack of teachers. I don't care that teachers are burning out due to student problems, due to all these issues. I don't care that teachers are quitting. I don't care that there's a shortage of teachers. They will not hire teachers who hold a biblical value. That right there is discrimination. That's what it is. Here's what she wrote. While I full-heartedly believe in religious freedom and people being able to practice whatever faith they have, I had some concerns regarding looking at this particular institution, said Venezuela, who identifies as bilingual, disabled, neurodivergent, queer, black, Latina. Gotta love the titles. Gotta love the titles. Give yourself a long title. Man, I should do this. Quadrilingual. Not really disabled. Disabled. I wear glasses, so my eyes aren't working right. Neurodivergent, sure. Straight. White. Canadian. I don't know. You had titles for days. It's like, how many titles can you give yourself? If you really want to know what that's about, that's critical race theory, or critical theory to a T. Every time you see titles like this, and I got to go a little more serious here. I know I'm being a little bit over the top. You can say I'm being dramatic, whatever. What you're seeing there is what's called intersectionality. That's intersectionality. How many boxes can I tick off? I don't want to be called English. I'm going to be bilingual, although I wasn't aware that was an issue. But I'm going to click off the disabled, so you're practicing ableism. If you go against it. Neurodivergent, that's against the, I don't know, what's the opposite of neurodivergent? Typical divergent? Typical neurotypical, I guess? Neurotypical. So you're not neurotypical. Queer. So you don't want to check off the straight. Black. So you want to check off. See, you got to understand what that is. This is checking off intersectionality. This is checking off the boxes of all of my victimhood. Although bilingual is not being a victimhood. It's just she didn't want to say English speaking. Because if you're not English, well then you're oppressed by the English. If you're disabled, you're oppressed by the able. If you're neurodivergent, you're oppressed by the neurotypical. If you're queer, well, then you're oppressed by the straight. If you're black, you're oppressed by the whites. If you're Latina, you're oppressed by the whites. You see, what she's done there is she's come out and she's checking all these boxes. That's intersectionality. And they're looking for the hegemonic oppressors. That's the actual language of critical theory. That's what's happening there. So that's really what that is. And I want you to understand that when you see somebody check off all these boxes, they're checking off what's called the intersectionality victimhood of how many points do I have so I can speak louder than your other. Because if you can't tick off those boxes, then you can't speak on any of those issues. And in fact, even worse than that, then you're the oppressor of those. So according to that, she would say she is oppressed by the English-speaking, able-bodied, neurotypical, straight, white people. That's who she's oppressed by, and you're going to throw Christian on there. That's what it is. Let's look what she says. She says, I'm going to start with our values. First, our vision in Washington Elementary School District is committed to achieving excellence for every child, every day, every opportunity, every child. So apparently every child gets in twice. When I go to Arizona Christian University's website, and I'm taking this directly from their website, above all else, be committed to Jesus Christ, accomplishing his will and advancing his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven, Venezuela continued. Part of our 4 values of the school is influence, engage, and transform the culture with truth by promoting the biblically informed values that are foundational to Western civilization, including the centrality of family, traditional sexual morality, and lifelong marriages between one man and one woman. She continues, I want to know how bringing people from an institution that is ingrained in their values that will very directly, 1, impact 3 of your board members who are part of the LGBT community. We have added our pronouns as at the Diocese of Solidarity to let our LGBT community know that we stand in making sure that they feel protected. We are only performing performative solidarity? Or are we going to dig deep and actually look at the partnerships that we are doing? She asked. Now, I'm going to say something here. I'm going to applaud her on this. Is that what am I applauding her for? She's being discriminatory. Of course she is. But she's being consistent with what she believes. I wish more of them would do this because this has become more evident. She's making it clear. Here's what we believe. We don't want them. We don't want them. Here's the thing. She says, because if we're bringing in people in whose mission, who has been told with their institution of education that above all else, it is to influence people to be biblically minded. How does that hold space for people of other faiths? How does that hold space for our members of the LGBT community? How does that hold space for people who think differently and don't have the same beliefs? At some point, we need to get real with ourselves and take a look at who we're making legal contracts with and the message that it's sending to our community, she added. So every other belief should be in there. I really hope, here's my thing, I hope that they don't have any Muslim teachers. Any teachers who have the Muslim faith. Why? Because they hold that homosexuality is a problem. So what do they actually... They want secular humanist teachers who would teach it. What the battle is there. And you got to understand, the battle is for the minds of the children. So it's all right to ingrain them in LGBT critical theory ideologies, but don't you dare tell them to think biblically. Teach them to think biblically. That's what this is. Don't you dare. You've got to understand, this is what's going on. They're forcing out anything that would actually challenge this. So don't you dare. And yes, a Christian school and a Christian should always have job, and I agree with the university here, to teach the truth of the scriptures. Now, I want to continue a little bit here. But they're continuing on this. Clayton, who's married to a same-sex partner, said he was troubled not only by ACU's traditional core values, but also its statement of faith, which, among other things, notes, we believe the term marriage has only one meaning, the uniting of one man and one woman in a single exclusive union as delineated in Scripture. He says, I went and looked into not only their core values, but then the statement of faith that they asked the students to sign and live by is what gave me pause, Clayton said. Yeah, every business, every school, everything has a statement of faith. They do. This is what you have to write, that you agree with these things. They're just bad because of it. Here's the thing. They say it's not just teaching, but it's teaching, as they say, with a biblical lens, with a proselytizing. It is embedded into how they teach, and I just don't believe that it belongs in schools. Boom. Right there. Again, I want to point this out. This is what's happening in schools. They're admitting here, in what they're not saying, they're admitting that they want to control the narrative. They want to control what kids hear. In other words, they don't want to call it this, but they want to proselytize into the LGBTQ community. That's what they want to do. He wants to do. He says, I would never want my son to talk about his two dads and be shamed by a teacher who believed a certain way, and it is at a school that demands that they teach through their biblical lens. Yet, if a student stands up in their class and says, no, boys are boys, girls are girls, husband and wife, male and female is the way to be, you would have an LGBTQ teacher who would come down on them and shame them. You see the hypocrisy here. This is the problem. What you have is you've got a complete clash of two worldviews. And they've decided that to make sure that their ideology is going forward, that they were not even going to hire any students who come out of a school that is a statement of faith that is on the biblical grounds. The absurdity of this is the fact that you're talking about saying the LGBTQ is only like 10% of the country's population, yet at the same time you're giving them such power. You want to know why LGBTQ is on the rise? This is why. Because the children are being ingrained into it. They are. And now, the question of it is, now they're going to argue here. They're going to argue here about things here. So, when questioned about the history of the relationship the district has had with the university over the years, a district official explained to the board that the student teachers have always signed agreements that prevent them from proselytizing and discriminating against children whose values don't align with their own. There, notice that. Don't mistake this. What they are excluding them for is simply because they hold biblical values. Does this mean that schools are now going to have an application form for their teachers? What do you believe about LGBTQ? What do you believe about marriage? Is this going to be the litmus test for students coming in? That's what it is. Notice that they've always had an agreement. So this isn't even something that they can point to and say, well, this happened here, here, and here, where they discriminated here, they discriminated. No. It's a perceived threat. Perceived threat. And here's why. Gomez-Whaley said that the board has received several emails from the community arguing against renewing the partnership with the ACU. She also argued that she doesn't think it is possible for Christian student teachers to separate their Christian values from their professional obligations to treat students equally under any legal requirement. She's saying it's not even possible. And I'm going to tell them that they're not possible. That's what's happening. It's not possible for them. They want to bring in LGBTQ to your students. And notice what she says. Here's the problem. For me, this is not a concern about Christianity. Actually, it is. It's a concern about biblical Christianity. It says there are plenty of Christian denominations who are LGBTQ friendly. No. What you mean is LGBTQ affirming. And I'm going to argue they are not Christian denominations. They are denominations that claim to be Christian, but they're not. So she's like, I just don't want, she's like, I want to make clear, for me, my pause is not that they're Christian so much as this particular institution's strong anti-LGBTQ stance and their strong belief that you believe this to your core and you take it out into the world. They're excluding the students for no other reason, not based on historical precedents, not on anything else. They are doing it simply based on their Christian beliefs. And she even points out the agreement, she says, is not good enough. She says, I simply don't know how a piece of paper can change somebody's underlying value system. Even though they may not do anything illegal, where they are preaching or using Bible verses, how do you shut off an essential part of your being and not be biased to individuals in which you are in charge of nurturing and supporting unconditionally? She asked. I don't see how that disconnect is possible. And I could ask her the exact same thing. How does she not recruit, how do LGBTQ teachers not recruit students into the LGBTQ, although they consider that fine? This is why you can go and you can find TikToks, you can find videos of teachers who put pride stuff all around the classroom, put pride flags all in the classroom, have it everywhere. But a Christian, how they even dare have a Bible in their desk, they're considered problems. You see, they're saying you're going to be excluded if you don't bow down to the LGBTQ. If you even declare that you hold biblical values on sexuality, on gender, and the such, you will not have this job. You will not be here. You will not be allowed to be here. That is the problem with this. Gomez Whaley, who was the most experienced board member, accepted blame for not raising questions about the partnership between the district and ACU earlier. There's a lot of things that I just didn't ask, quite frankly, the questions that I should have, and so I take ownership for that. But at this point in time, I do believe that we owe it to especially all of our students when we're working in equity. Notice it's equity, not equality. But especially our LGBTQ students and staff who are under fire. See, this is the case that is very much the fact that even a Christian in there is being considered offensive. They're being excluded because of biblical values. As I said, it's not because of anything that they've done. They can't point to even a single time that somebody who went, a student teacher went in and started proselytizing in the classroom. It's all on the perceived notion that they could do this, and because a Christian, it's in their course, so they shouldn't have the job. And they finished saying this: we cannot continue to align ourselves with organizations that starkly contrast our values and say that we legitimately care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that we legitimately care about all of our families. Well, you can't say that either. There's two things in that final statement there. One, they can't say the same thing either. They can't. They can't say that they're going to respect a child who comes from an actual biblical family with biblical values, because you're going to tell them they're wrong. You're going to shame them. Second, what this admits is that they're not teaching academics. They're teaching a value system. And Christians, you're being excluded from this. If you hold biblical values, you're excluded from this. That is what it is saying. That is heartbreaking, but that's exactly what it is saying. All right, let's get to the second story, that you will be excluded. For that, we got to get this. All right, our second story for the day. It's not student teachers this time. It's somebody else. It's OBGYNs. Pro-life doctors say they were banned from medical conference due to abortion stance. Due to something they believe. They are removed. Let's break this one down a little bit. A group of pro-life doctors say they were banned from running an exhibit booth at a national medical conference because their beliefs on abortion differ from those of the organizers. In a tweet posted Monday, the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs said they were banned from attending the annual OBGYN, man, a lot of letters here, educational conference this morning. The event in question, the American College of Obstetrician and Gynecologists Council on Resident Education in Gynecology and the Association of Professors of Gynecology and Obstetricians annual meeting. Okay, I'm going back to the OBGYN. That's definitely shorter. It says it was held from Monday to Wednesday at the Gaylord National Resort and Convention Center in National Harbor, Maryland. It was held in National Harbor, Maryland. Now, there is a video here of her talking. I'm gonna let her play it out, give you something to listen to rather than just my voice here. So I'm gonna go with that. Take a listen to her report. It's just under 2 minutes here.
I'm Dr. Christina Francis. I'm the incoming CEO of the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs.
Sorry, let me restart that. The volume was way down. So I got one way up. I'm going to restart that. Let's restart it here. Let's try that again.
I'm Dr. Christina Francis. I'm the incoming CEO of the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs. I'm here today in National Harbor, Maryland, outside of the hotel where the APCO CREOG conference is being held. This is a conference for physicians who are educating the next generation of OBGYNs. We've exhibited at this conference for the last 15 years, and I was planning on being inside this hotel today at our exhibit booth, which we booked last year. However, just a few days ago, after already having traveled to this area, we were informed that our exhibit booth had been canceled by ACOG. Despite multiple requests for an explanation as to why, the only explanation we've received is a vague explanation that we disagree with ACOG, presumably on the issue of abortion. This is very interesting considering the theme of this year's conference, which is building bridges. However, ACOG is showing yet again that they have no desire to build bridges with those of us who disagree even a little bit with them on their position on abortion. This is especially dangerous for medical students and residents as it normalizes intentional feticide as part of women's healthcare, which we know that it is not. It also suppresses scholarly debate. Scientific advancement is made through the free exchange of ideas and through critically looking at both sides of an issue and deciding which the evidence better supports. However, ACOG obviously is afraid for students and residents and for their medical educators to be exposed to any other position on abortion other than their radical position. And so, as the incoming CEO of the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs, I'd like to openly invite Dr. Maureen Phipps, CEO of ACOG, to a scholarly debate on the impact of elective abortion on the health of women. I will meet her anytime, any place, so that we can present both sides of this issue and allow not only the general public, but also the next generation of physicians to decide for themselves what the evidence supports.
All right, so you heard that. There's the report. I'm going to go through a little bit more here. I'm not going to read out because it's just kind of recapping some of the things she said, but it was in a different order. But notice some things there, that they were there for the last 15 years. They've been part of it for the last 15 years, and all of a sudden they were shut out. Second, they weren't even told that they weren't allowed until they got there, and then it was shut down. And when they asked for an explanation, they were just told that you disagree with ACOG. You disagree with ACOG's values. That's all it came down to. Under the skies, and they said the theme is building bridges. So that's really what she was talking about. But I'm going to go a little bit further here, because it gets a little more interesting. It says, in an email to the Christian Post, ACOG Director of Communications, Kate Connors, insisted that her organization did not plan to respond to that tweet, adding that CREOG APOG's annual meeting, we welcome exhibitors and meeting participants that align with ACOG's and APOG's shared commitment to the advancement of evidence-based scientific information. No, they don't. No, they don't. What they agree with, they allow, is evidence-based, that where the evidence favors them, favors their argument, not the debate, not actual proof, but actually just favors them. They're shutting out everything else. How do I know that? Let's look at this next part here. It's a little more fascinating. ACOG has compiled a guide to language and abortion. This will be good. I guarantee you. Because when somebody puts out a guide of language, it's words you're allowed to say, words you're not allowed to say. That's where it's going to be good. All right? That's what we're saying. Guide to language, say, urging those writing about reproductive health, so not abortion, reproductive health, to use language that is medically appropriate, clinically accurate, and without bias. Boom, that last line, without bias. They're making the assumption. The assumption there is that the pro-lifers are biased where the pro-choicers are not. That's the assumption. Anytime you see that, they say without bias. They're trying to make this, well, they're biased, but we're not. Everybody's got a bias. I'm going to tell you this. Everybody's got a bias. I've got a bias. I just lay it out right at the start. My bias is the fact that Jesus Christ is the firm foundation, and everybody would be better off if they built on that foundation. That's my bias. Absolutely, that's my bias. I point it out, and it makes more sense. Their bias is that abortion is 100% fine. There's no repercussions. It's just a normal procedure. Nobody gets hurt. It's no worse than getting a tooth pulled. That's kind of the idea. Kind of thing. That's what she's saying. So according to the guide, much of the language that is colloquially used to describe abortion or discuss health policies that impact abortion has a bias and anti-choice rhetoric and is inherently biased and inaccurate. Is it? Let's look at some things. Let's look at the words. Here's their list that you're not allowed to say, or you shouldn't say. Phrases identified by ACOG as problematic include late-term abortion. Late-term abortion, okay. So if somebody has an abortion after 20 weeks, that's not late-term abortion. What do you call it now? Chemical abortion. Okay. Surgical abortion. Well, what is it? If it's not chemical, it's not surgical. What is it? What is it? Heartbeat bill. You can't say heartbeat bill. You can't say fetal heartbeat. To say that it's got a fetal heartbeat, well, that's just anti-choice rhetoric. Dismemberment ban. Abortion provider? Planned Parenthood is an abortion provider, but you can't say that. What do you want? A fetal execution site? Is that Planned Parenthood? That's what everyone should call Planned Parenthood now. Planned Parenthood, from this day forward, I decree, shall be called fetal execution centers. That's what they should now be called. Self-induced abortion, elective abortion, partial birth abortion, womb. You can't even say womb? Really? So where is this surgical procedure that shall no longer be called anything of abortion be called? Where is it happening at? And abortion on demand. Not to say that either. ACOG classifies chemical abortion as a biased term designed to make medication abortion sound scarier than the safe, effective medical intervention that it is. Safe for who? Even if you take it, it's going to end a life. Don't worry, there's even more. There's more. Those were bad enough. There's more. Let's continue this guide. ACOG also rejects the characterization of a dilation and evacuation ban to refer to restrictions on a procedure known as dilation and eviction that removes the fetus using a combination of vacuum aspiration and forceps, which can lead to disarticulation. The medical organization condemns the term dismemberment as an intentional use of inflammatory emotional language that centers the procedures on the fetus rather than on the pregnant person who is the clinic's patient. Yeah. Great. Wow. Did you notice this? We don't want to talk about the terms dismemberment. Look, if you don't understand what's happening here, here's what's actually happening in this dilation and evacuation procedure. What is actually happening here is that they take a device, a spreader, and put it in you and to open the woman up, to open up the birth canal, is what it is. Then they, depending on which aspect they're using, depending on the term, they take either a suction tube that's got powerful suction that goes up inside the, well, you're not allowed to say womb, so uterus, and grabs a hold of the fetus and starts to suck it out. Understand this. The fetus is alive. The fetus is trying to get away from this. Will clasp to the side of the uterus, the side of the womb. And when they suck it out, it will literally rip the fetus apart. It's going to pull off legs. It's going to pull off arms. It's a dismemberment. But if it's older than that and they can't do the suction, they will use vice grips, basically forceps, and they will go in there and they will grab it and pull it out. Now keep in mind, to finish it off, they have to scrape out the placenta and all of that. And the womb, this is why scarring tissue and stuff happens inside. Yet they want to get away from that. Why? Because we've got to get away from focusing on the fetus to talking about the pregnant person, the clinician's patients, or the fetal executioner's patient. This is what they're doing. The guide also advises people not use the term baby and unborn child to describe a baby, stating that centering the language on a future state of a pregnancy is medically inaccurate. No, it's not. If you left it alone, it's a child. It doesn't matter if it's inside the womb or outside the womb. It's an unborn. If it's inside the womb, it's unborn child. That's what it is. So, but you're look. It's not a child yet. It's not a child. This is really what the argument there is. That's a future state of a pregnancy. No, it's a fetus from the very moment. It's an unborn child from the very moment. It is. And this says, it decries the phrase elective abortion as an effort to diminish the value of the abortion care that many patients need. No, elective abortion is when a person just doesn't want to be pregnant, says, I don't want responsibility for my actions. And so they go and they kill somebody else. They go to a fetal execution site and they get this done. ACOG contends that descriptions of intact dilation and evacuation as partial birth abortion is graphic inflammatory language that exists to distort the clinical reality. No, a partial birth abortion is when the child is partway out of the vaginal canal and they kill it then, before it's out, because then they decree it, well, it wasn't completely born, so therefore it's not a person until it's completely out. So as long as it's not completely out, then it's not a person and we can kill it. It also advises against the use of the term womb because it can be used to apply an emotional value to a human organ. They want to dehumanize this. In a statement reacting to the news that Apolog lost access to the ACOG conference, Dr. Ingrid Skopp of the pro-life research organization, the Charlotte Lozier Institute, asserted that ACOG is dramatically out of touch with the vast majority of its own members who love caring for women and babies and want no part in ending any patient's life. Notice because an OBGYN, their specialty is the fetus. Every time my wife went to an OBGYN appointment, every time she went, I didn't go as many on our last child, but for the others, I went to almost every one. They always check the fetal heart rate. They always check all of this stuff to make sure everything is good. And make sure the baby is growing well. That's the patient. One survey found that 86% of U.S. OBGYNs did not want to carry out abortions, excluding pro-life obstetricians from this important educational conference is a transparent attempt by pro-abortion ACOG leaders to convince students that they are alone if they oppose abortion, which is far from the truth. There you go. That's what it's about again. It's about eliminating the opposition. It's about eliminating the people who hold a differing view. In this case, the pro-life organization may not necessarily be a Christian organization, but they have in this case a Christian value, the value of life. All life is made in the image of God. All life has value and is sacred, whether it's in the womb or out of the womb. They're saying we're going to remove that. Because you hold a pro-life stance, we are not going to allow you to attend to an educational conference with one of your booths, because we don't want the incoming OBGYNs to know that there's a group out there that's against it. And to make sure that we control it even better, we're going to forbid the language that is ascribed in the ways that we don't want it to. So we're going to control the conversation. We're going to control the information that these students see. Why? Because remember, they don't have a bias, but their real bias is because they want abortion on demand. They want to have lots of these fetal execution centers wherever they can, and they want to train executioners. And if the next generation comes in as OBGYNs, they want them to believe that abortion is the better option over giving birth. That's what they want. And to do that, if you hold to a pro-life stance, you are going to be excluded from the conversation. That's what is happening there. That's what the problem is. So what you're going to see and continue to see, that if you're holding traditional Christian values, you are going to start to be excluded from various places. That is what is coming. That is what is happening. That is what we are seeing. All right, let's take our break now. Let's take our break from that. That is a lot to take in. That is a lot that is there. But this is what is happening. And the point of that is, if you look, they're saying that they're on a foundation of inclusion and diversity, but it's really not. They try to claim that they don't have a bias, and it's that foundation is a complete and utter lie once you've broken it down. And it's one that will not hold. And I continue to urge you to build on the firm foundation of Jesus Christ. So, with that, come on back after the break. If you get a chance to unwind from that a little bit, come on back, and we're going to continue on this idea of you will be excluded, but it's going to be on a little different way. So come on back. Hope to see you there. Come on back.
On behalf of the team at Creation Ministries International, thank you for your first-time visit to creation.com. Creation or evolution? Design or time and chance? It's a foundational question that affects every human being. And that's because what you believe about where we came from affects your ideas about the meaning of life, how you live it, and where you're headed. You see, what you believe about where you came from also shapes your view on whether there's an eternity or not. If we are the result of meaningless chance, then we simply return to nothing when we die. But if there is a Creator God, the Bible tells us that He has done something about the fact we will all eventually die. But can the Bible be trusted in an age of science? We pose three big questions and hope that you can see that the answers to questions 2 and 3 depend upon what you believe about the first one. Creation.com represents over 30 years of research by many scientists and specialists, and here you will find articles and media presentations on this hot button topic, the creation versus evolution debate. Best of all, it's all free. Many have questions like, what about dinosaurs in the Bible? Could God have used evolution? Is there life on other planets? And why would a loving God allow suffering and death? We've endeavored to answer these and hundreds more. So please enjoy creation.com.
Hello and welcome back after our break. I'm glad you're back with us as we're continuing our episode here on being excluded. And before the break, we looked at a couple of where student teachers are being excluded because of what they believe and what the school believes. We looked at some pro-life nurses that have been excluded because of what they believe. What a fascinating thing. We're going to be continuing on that vein, but we're going to turn it a little bit, not being excluded, but excluding ourselves. That's what we're going to be looking at in this second half. And to do that, I'm going to be going to another article. And if you've been with me for a while, it's a little different because I don't normally do that. If it's your first time with me, I want to welcome you. And I thank you for joining. But the reason I want to go to this article, and oftentimes what I often do, as I said, is the fact that what I look at is I look at the first half. I look at articles, looking at what is your worldview. Does that worldview hold water? Is it actually what it says it is? Where you've got a worldview that's out there that we saw before the break that claims to be wanting diversity, wanting inclusion. What you actually saw there by them excluding a belief system is them saying, no, we don't want true diversity. We don't want true inclusion. We want everybody to think like we do. And that's the thing. So where they promote something, it's actually not. So their whole worldview doesn't really work when it's taken to an extreme. But then generally after the break, I go to helping us build on that firm foundation. And we're going to be doing that. But normally I do that by teaching, by looking at a bad teaching and showing what it really is. But in this one, as I said, we're going to be looking at another article just briefly. And it's all about exclusion as well, but it's a little different. It's about people excluding themselves. Excluding themselves. What do you mean excluding themselves? Well, since the pandemic has hit, a lot of things have changed. And that particularly also goes for churches. And because of that, churches had to learn to adapt in things, particularly whether you agree with it or not. The pandemic, because of governments, because of the pandemic, let me put it that way, ordered that, stating that churches were not essential, so you're not allowed to gather anymore, you're not allowed to be together, and you'll be fined if you break that kind of thing. And for larger churches, they could, in essence, afford the hit a little bit. Smaller churches, that would be a death knell towards them. So they learned to adapt a little bit. They learned how to continue to gather a little bit, and those things have carried on. And I want to look at that a little bit, at a growing trend that has happened. Then I'm going to ask, is it good, is it bad, or is it causing exclusion? So for that, I'm going to go right to the article here. Most leaders see in-person only worship services as a thing of the past, a study finds. Most church leaders see in-person only worship services as a thing of the past. Now, we're going to ask, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Or is it an in-between thing? Is it neither? Can it be either? Let's look here. It says, as many churches have now reopened their doors in the wake of the pandemic, only a minority of them view in-person worship services as the church model of the future. A majority see a hybrid model using various online technologies as the new normal, according to the new study from PushPay. In its 2023 State of the Church Technology Report, PushPay, the leading payments and engagement solutions provider for faith-based and nonprofit sectors, the company said when their researchers asked church leaders what the future of their church would look like in 12 months, only 28% of respondents indicated in-person only, while many had multiple outlooks. Surprisingly, instead of seeing a single answer, hundreds of respondents selected 2 or more options. This indicates significant uncertainty about what their ministries may look like in a year's time. PushPay researchers said, the level of doubt hampers a church's ability to make informed tech decisions. Adopting new digital tools should be grounded in a vision of the future, but at this inflection point, that may be difficult for many ministries. Says, while 28% of the respondents saw in-person only services in the next 12 months, an almost equal share, 25%, believe that the church will be meeting in the metaverse, which Facebook describes as a set of virtual spaces where you can create and explore with other people who aren't in the same physical space as you. Now, I'm going to pause there for a minute. And I want to point out something here. You may question the numbers, and you're right to. That's critical thinking. I always encourage critical thinking. And here's why. PushPay is an organization that deals in technology to churches and desires for them to sell. They're a business. So, of course, they may lean towards more saying less and less are online or in-person only. So get on board and so buy our product. So there's that kind of issue. But then you get this idea of 25% describe the meeting in the metaverse, or basically online only. And it says a virtual space where you can create and explore with other people who aren't in the same physical space as you. The question I will ask there, is that a good thing? Or rather, is that enough? Is that enough? Is that enough? It says another 20% said worship will be online only. So, according to that, that's 45%. 45% basically saying in person is a thing of the past. That's what it's saying. And then it says, while a staggering 81% of respondents predicted worship services will encompass a hybrid model. Now, I question that as well. Now, you run the numbers there, you're like, wait a minute, you just said it was like 40% said in person, no in person. 28% says in person only, and then 81% is a hybrid. But how can you answer it? Well, because they said that people marked more than one. They did. People marked more than one. But again, that hybrid model, I would have to see the actual survey that was offered. And the reason being is because hybrid can mean a lot of different things. And I'm going to say something. Hybrid may not be something new. The pandemic really kind of pushed it, but it may not be something new. Even where I'm at, okay? I've been here for 8 years. We've always taped. We taped and we put it on later. The only difference now is I do it live. When I get up to teach, I just put a live feed on and I let it go. They would say that's a hybrid model. But truthfully, I'm doing that by using nothing more than a stand and a phone. That's it. And it just shoots me, shoots the background behind me. That's it. That's all it shoots. Now, that's about the only thing that's changed, but it's not the only thing that's changed. I'm a little more careful about what I say. And what I mean by that is not the topics, not the lessons, but if I use examples and things, I don't use names, especially if I make reference to somebody who's currently there. But churches have been doing that forever. I remember back when I was younger, being in churches where they would record it for shut-ins. It would be audio recordings, and you go to conferences, you could buy the CD, you could buy the cassettes if you go back that far, and you could buy these things. So that's not a huge difference. But there is something that's different that is happening, is the fact that you've given rise to this online technology. And what it has done, I believe, and this is where I kind of really want to focus a little bit more, is that people have found more excuses not to attend, not to actually gather. And I've run into that with people online as well when they talk about things about, well, what church do you go to? And they'll say, well, I don't go to any church. Or they'll say, my church is, and they'll name online ministries. So they don't physically go to church. And so that leaves the question, should we physically go to church? Now, again, I'm not against streaming it. I'm not against taping it and putting it online. I think it can be very, very useful. It can be. Particularly when you have shut-ins, people who can't get out due to illnesses, people who can't get out due to surgeries, people who are in long-term care homes, and they want to be able to hear the message, they want to be able to hear the teaching. That is all, that's where it's good. Where it runs into the problem is when you have people who say, well, I'm not going to go. I'm just going to stay home. I remember watching a movie once, and then one of the lead characters was like, I'm not going to, it's like, even when I don't get up and go to the physical building, I still want to get my church. And they turn on the TV. It's this idea that as long as I sit there, I can just catch it on TV. And is that enough is the question I have to ask. Is that enough? Is it enough to just simply sit there and say, I can get whatever I want? And things such as YouTube and Rumble and all these streaming sites have made it so easy for people just to stay home and then get whatever teaching they want. Where they've got a church down the street that they could easily go to, and yet they choose to stream the service that's 2,000 miles away because it's convenient. One of the downsides of the pandemic is people have gotten so comfortable sitting home that they just don't attend anymore. And so the exclusion that is happening here is not people being excluded because of their beliefs, but people excluding themselves from the gathering together of believers. That's where it is. But I'm going to tell you, you're not doing yourself any good. You're not. I'm gonna do two things here. I'm gonna do something a little different. I'm gonna give you news from an article. Now, I copied this a couple of years ago, but it's surprising benefits for attending in-person church. That's what it is. Surprising health benefits. So, this is a study from an article put out from altea.org, 5 surprising health benefits of attending church. There. The actual ones. And I put links in the article, things like that you can get. So first, people who attend church, better sleep. Better sleep. A study by the Sleep Health Journal, you can actually get the full thing there, found an association between better sleep and church attendance. According to the study's authors, more religious adults in particular tend to exhibit healthier sleep outcomes than their less religious counterparts. And I think there's a reason for that. There is. I think the real reason is because since we're living in a world that's out of control, since we're living in a world that has no rhyme or reason, it seems, to know that somebody is in control, to know that somebody is guiding it all, grants a peaceful sleep. You're not as anxious, you're not as worried, you're not as stressed, because you know that somebody's over all these things. Number 2, less risk for depression and suicide. In a study published by the JAMA Psychiatry, researchers found that between 1996 and 2010, women who attended any religious service once a week or more were 5 times less likely to commit suicide. Again, suicide often comes. Now, there are mental illness. I'm not going to dissuade mental illness. Often comes from helplessness. That's really what it comes in. It comes to I'll say most of it is from helplessness, where you're like, nothing, I can't do anything about it, it's better if I'm out of here. And again, knowing that somebody is in control, knowing that somebody is over this, and hearing somebody tell you that there is something for this, that it will be used, gives you comfort, gives you strength. Number 3, more stable, happy, and sexually satisfying marriages. According to the Institute of Family Studies, the couple that prays together stays together. That is, couples who practice their faith through regular church attendance together tend to report significantly higher relationship quality than those couples who do not attend services together. Fascinating, isn't it? Well, why not? See, we're living in a culture that, again, that talks about no gender roles. When things are actually defined, whether we like this or not, we actually crave structure. We crave rules. And because of that, we function better that way. So when you hear about, here's how the man is supposed to be, here's what his job is, here's how he's supposed to, I'm not talking about the old misogynistic men, you rule with an iron fist. I'm talking about the biblical definition of what a man is supposed to be. You can, in his life and in his marriage and as a father, it gives structure. According to the Marriage and Religion Research Institute, adults ages 18 to 59 in intact marriages who worshiped weekly were most likely to report enjoying intercourse extremely or very much with their current sexual partner, according to the National Health and Social Life Survey. And I can argue why. And I've taught this in the past, that sex is more than just the physical aspect of two people coming together. There is a bonding that happens. The two become one. Sex is a gift from the Creator that is designed for the man and the woman to become one flesh. And the ultimate expression of that is through when they're joined together in more than just a physical act, but in actual intimacy. And it comes out with a child who is the two of them become one. An aspect. How about number 4, longer life. According to a 2016 study of JAMA Internal Medicine, women who reported attending religious services more than once a week had a 33% lower risk of dying during the study period compared to those who said they never went. Now, I always find that a fascinating thing, that you got lower risk. It just means 33% of them less of them died during that time. Number 5, lower blood pressure. A 1998 study found that religiously active older adults tend to have lower blood pressure than those who were less active. By religious activity, researchers meant those who engage in frequent church attendance, praying, and studying the Bible. It lowers your blood pressure. I'm reminded of one of my favorite shows, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. When Perry was at the start, he was always trying to deal with stress because of all the running everything. And he's in control. He's got everything, and he's yelling. It's like Clark was always telling him, try this. And he was always trying different things. It's what he was trying to do. He was lowering his blood pressure, his stress. And I think that can happen when we're in the church and we're with people and we hear that God's in control. We're not as worried about things. We're not as stressed about things. And so the lower blood pressure, and go right that, number 6, reduces stress. Time spent drawing inward and focusing your energy on clearing your thoughts leads to drastic reduction in stress levels. After spending time in a place of worship, you feel lighter, more confident, and free from the worldly worries. That's just some there, okay? That's just physical. And I think that is important. That's the physical attendance of it that you don't get if you just stay home. And so that's just a physical, psychological thing. But I want to talk about the reason behind it all. For that, I'm going to go to the quintessential verse on church attendance. Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10. Let me pull it up here. All right. 19 to 25. I'm going to go through it. But the quintessential verse there is verse 25. 10:25. But I think it shows exactly why it's there. It says, therefore, brethren, having boldness to enter the holiest by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way which he consecrated for us through the veil, that is his flesh, and having a high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled with an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. Let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. So there's the quintessential verse, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. What does that actually mean? I'm going to hold that actually means the physical gathering of it. As nice as it is to be able to have teaching online, and that is a good thing, make no mistake. I encourage people to take advantage of that. There is lots of good teaching out there. There's a lot of bad teaching out there. But there's a lot of good teaching out there, and you can partake of it, and it's good to take it in, but it's missing the gathering together, the assembling together. There's something about assembling together. And I argue that church, gathering as a church, is more than just gathering on a weekday, on one day a week. A gathering, although it can be good. It can be. I think the problem is that people have isolated themselves, and they've regulated church to being nothing more than just a spectator sport. Like as if we go to a baseball game. Now, I've attended a few major league games. The first one I didn't enjoy as much. Not because I didn't enjoy the game wasn't good. I had a migraine from driving through downtown Toronto traffic, which really wasn't good. So I didn't enjoy it. The second game I enjoyed much more. I left early. We're talking like I left like 3 hours before the game. I got a parking space, and I just kind of walked downtown, had a hot dog, fed some birds, that kind of thing. I enjoyed the second game. But it's a spectator sport. When something good happens, you cheer. Yeah, great, yeah. And I think you see that attitude has been taken over into churches, where the audience sits there, and when something good happens, the band, the team does something great, they clap like, yeah, woo! And they hear like, give a hand for the Lord, yeah, praise, give a hand, yeah. And you praise that way. It's become a spectator sport. It really has. And you get some, they'll raise their hands and that's fine, but it's still a spectator. Instead of them actually being active participants, they're spectators. Truthfully, that's just kind of the nature of how our services are done. Now, churches do different things. Like when you take communion, you participate. Some people can sing, they participate. Some give testimonies, some give thanks. Sometimes they even choose songs. Hey, let's sing this one. It's like, okay, let's do that. And that's participation. But there's something more when the church gathers, when they gather for other functions as well, when they gather for a meal, when they gather to do a work day, when they just go out and, do apple picking together. It's building the community, and it's important. And here's why. One of the things that we have to do is let's hold fast, verse 23, to the confession of our hope. We're living in a world today that is devoid without hope. And if you don't think so, take a look at the actual worldviews. This is why I always talk about worldviews. Every single worldview, minus the theistic world, the theistic or polytheistic worldview, is ultimately nihilistic at its core. What do I mean? I mean, nihilism is just basically there's no meaning to anything. There's no purpose to anything. The atheistic lifestyle is basically that. Is nihilistic. There's no rhyme or reason. You're here by mistake, whatever. And they can make up a reason for existing, and the reason they'll say, oh, the reason is to propagate your genes. And it's fascinating because I watched the show Andromeda with Kevin Sorbo, and there's a whole race in there called the Nietzscheans. And their whole philosophy in life is based off the teachings of Friedrich Nietzsche. If you're not familiar with what that is, you're probably familiar with the phrase God is dead, or the movie God's Not Dead. That comes from Friedrich Nietzsche. But in the end, their whole reason for living, their whole reason for being is basically to propagate, to be genetically pure, to be genetically, get the strongest offspring. But in the end, it's pointless. It really is. If this is the same with like the hedonistic lifestyle, where it's all about my life, my pleasure. Romanticism, which romanticism says follow your heart. But in the end, without a creator, and if you hold that everything that happens is nothing more than just cosmic chance, and that we're here by an accidental Big Bang, we're here by just mere coincidence, you really have no hope. You can try to do whatever you want, you can try to find purpose, but the end result is nihilistic, where in the end it's going to matter absolutely nothing. And it's not going to matter whether the human race is extinct in 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10 million years. It's not going to matter. In the end, the result's the same. You're not going to exist. You cease to exist. Human race cease to exist. And that's it. And the problem is, because this is being put forth so much, that we're seeing a culture and a generations that have no hope. And this is being pushed upon Christians. And so if we're going to this, it says, let us hold fast to the confession. We need to be together with other believers, to gather with them, to get this strength, to be encouraged in this, to be reminded of this when we're going through a very difficult time. We need that encouragement. I'm not talking about empty platitudes of saying, don't worry, God's got a plan. It's all going to work out. Look, those are true, but they're not very comforting in the matter. They're just platitudes. They are. It doesn't really offer much comfort when we're going through things. It's kind of like in the movie Men in Black, where Jay and Kay are talking, and Jay walks up and sees Kay kind of quickly turning off a video, and it was Kay's fiance, I think it was. Or, yeah, Kay's fiance, and then Jay comes up and he's like, well, you know what they say, it's better to love and lost than never loved at all. And Kay just looks at him and says, really? Try it. I think that's the downside of these empty platitudes. But there's something about being together, to being encouraged. Because one of the feelings that is definitely there that we suffer from is this feeling of being alone. It's a social media problem where we live our lives through social media. We may meet people, we may interact with people, but we really live through social media, and we look at their lives and we look at them in social media. And very few people put on social media their struggles. They put their highlights. They really do. I'll give you an example. One of my sons, we were trying to get a photo of him. The photo turned out quite well at the studio. And it's great. But what people don't understand, you look at that photo and go, oh, that's a great photo. That's an amazing photo. But it actually took 2.5 hours just to get that one photo. That's right. 2.5 hours. They didn't see all the others about the time trying to get him to sit still, trying to do this. No. You don't see it. You just get the snapshot. And that's what people get. They say, oh, they were on this trip. Oh, look, that's over there. And you start looking at that and you feel alone. Yet when you shut that off and you gather together with believers, you get the encouraged to hold to the confession with hope. And what you're reminded of here is that your true hope is not grounded in you. It's grounded in who Jesus is. That's what he says. He who promised is faithful. That means even when we have failed, even when we have fallen apart, Jesus is faithful to his promise. You can't get away from that. That's what we have to remember and understand. And then he goes on to verse 24, and let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. Notice there, we need that encouragement to go forth. We need that encouragement to be strengthened. We need that encouragement to show good works. Because I think we've developed this idea, because of the pandemic again, we isolated from everybody. And that's one of the things that I felt has even happened within the church. One of the things, and when I looked at it, and one of my goals, I always have like a 3-step goal for the churches that I minister in. Evangelism, discipleship, and all that, and that kind of thing. It's kind of how it is. It comes from the Great Commission, is what it is. So evangelism, baptism, discipleship. Those are the 3. Evangelism is kind of self-explanatory. Discipleship is also kind of explanatory. But baptism there is integrating them into the life of the church. It is. And so the church is more than just a one-time gathering. It's gathering together. And there's a social aspect. To do things like just get together and watch a movie. Get together, as I said, and just have a good day. Have a meal together. And because of the pandemic, those social aspects were broken. And so you've got to rebuild it and to spur one another on in this kind of thing. I think we overlook how important it is to have that encouragement in our life, to get out, to be with other people, that kind of thing. That's what we need. And we need that stirring together. And it says you need to do it. It's like to assemble so don't forsake the gathering together. Why? Because when you forsake it, you're losing this connection. You are. When we exclude ourselves, and there's people that come up with plenty of reasons why they exclude themselves. I'm too tired. I don't feel like it. I've got too much work to do. I can get it online. That's the issue. Is I can get it online. That's where I want to talk about that. It's like I can just get it online. See, as I said, online is good. Having it streaming is good for those who are unable to physically get out. As I said, those who are homebound because of illness, those who are recovering from surgery, those who are in long-term care homes. But it's those who just say, you know what, I can just catch it online and say that's good enough. It's not. It's not good enough. If it were good enough, our culture wouldn't be in the problem it is. You wouldn't. This is why they have numerous articles about the fact of the dangers of social media on mental health. Because it's not good enough. It is no replacement for the actual gathering together. And look what it says. I want you to exhort one another. That's encourage one another. I want you to strengthen one another. I want you to uplift one another. That's what we have to do. And it says, I want you to do it as so much more as you see the day approaching. Now, what is that day? When you see the phrase, the day, in the New Testament, it's referring to the coming of Jesus, or the day of the wrath of God. Now, some people will try to tell you that before Jesus comes back, everything's got to get better. The church is going to have a greater influence. The church is going to build up these mandates, conquer the 7 mountains, the NAR, that kind of thing. The scriptures make it clear in that day, people are going to be wicked. People are going to be selfish. People are going to be lovers of money, disobedient to parents, sexually immoral. In other words, they're going to be building up and filling up the cup of God's wrath. It means darkness and sin are going to be rampant. And this is what you're seeing in our culture. And as you see this, it's easy for the believer to become discouraged when the name of Christ is being blasphemed amongst everybody. This is why things such as student teachers are being excluded. Even when there's a need for teachers, they're being excluded simply because of the belief system. That pro-life OBGYNs are being excluded because they're pro-life. This is going to happen more and more and more. It's not sit back and say, oh, everything's going great. People are grasping for good news. They're grasping for it. And they're jumping on every little thing. But the truth is, it's going to get worse as the cup of God's wrath is getting filled up by the people. As the sins of the world reach their full, it's going to get worse. And until the time of the Lord's return and the day of his wrath, the Christian needs to be gathering with other believers to be able to be encouraged. And this is something that takes place beyond the service. Let me tell you something. It's fascinating to watch. After I've gotten done teaching and our service is done, during the pandemic, the church building cleared out very, very quickly. Everybody just really quickly went home. We encouraged them to, although they weren't supposed to stay inside, to stay outside, talk to socialists. Everybody went home. But But since the pandemic has been lifted, I've seen where people have stuck around for up to an hour, talking, interacting, encouraging one another. That is what's supposed to happen. That's something you don't get in the online community. And then you talk about, oh, well, we can type messages. It's one other. It's not the same. One, you don't get the inflection. You don't get how people are talking. You don't get the comforting tone. And online texting isn't the greatest way, because you miss those things. Things can be misread. And people do that all the time. That is what is happening. And so one of these things I want to encourage you is to not exclude yourself from this life, from the life of the church. The only one who's going to exclude you is you. And so make use of it. Gather together. Find yourself a good Bible-believing church, a Bible-teaching church. And you may not agree with absolutely everything, but if they've got the core right, that they're honestly seeking Christ above all things, that they're proclaiming His death and His resurrection for the forgiveness of sins, if they're proclaiming that Jesus Christ is the only way, and they're uncompromising when it comes to the Word of God, get involved. Get with those people. I've shown you why it's so. I gave you those health reasons that are there, but it's the spiritual reasons that are also there. If your desire is to live a life that is glorifying to Christ, I'm going to say you need to be gathering together with believers. You need to be together, because that's the only encouragement you're going to get. The world isn't going to encourage you to follow Christ. They're going to encourage you to push Christ to the side. They're going to encourage you to give up the solid foundation and go to their weak one. You need to be with others. You're going to need the strength that comes from it. That's why Christ designed us. He designed us as all one body, and encouraging to be together and spurred on to do good works. That's what we need. So online services are good when they're used properly. Don't let that become the be-all, end-all of your gathering together. Use it when you have to. But in all other cases, gather together. Be encouraged, be strengthened together. That's what you got to do. All right, we're going to stop there for today. As always, I thank you for joining me. If you like to support, I never ask for money. I never ask for anything. All I ask is that you would share this with somebody. Share it with one another. Put it out there. That's how it spreads. If it's helpful for you, spread it towards one another. If you have any questions, want to talk anything, write to me, pastorstephenteed@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. You can write in the comments on YouTube. Some do that as well. Send me a message. I'd love to talk to you. If you're in my area, come check us out. Come join us. There's plenty of friendly people, even more friendly than I am. Come check us out. Gather together wherever you are. And until next time, build on that solid foundation of Jesus Christ. And when you're firmly established on it, I guarantee you will not be put to shame.